Hi, I'm Beth Reese, founder of Yogini's Yoga for Youth and host of the OHMazing Way podcast. And so Jodi Golda Komitor is here in the online studio, although let me tell you what, for the last 12 years, I feel like she's been here in my heart, and really, you really have. How are you today?
Oh, Beth. I feel like I want to call you Bethy. Did you know that actually my birth middle name is Beth?
No.
Yes. So we have that in common. So Beth, I am so delighted to be here with you, and thank you so much for the invitation. And I'm just can't wait to drop in with you and have a sweet conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, and so before I always start recording, I visit with whoever I'm having a conversation with, and so Jodi and I've only met like once in person at a National Yoga Kids Conference, and thank you to all the people who make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this feeling of, I think, mutual connectivity. And in like the first 10 seconds coming online, my heart welled up, my eyes welled up, and just to have this opportunity to be with you and be in conversation with you about practices and teachings and the possibility of transformation for youth and teachers and parents. I'm so honored you're here.
Thank you. It's mutual.
Yeah. And really, so when, before I go there, let's take a moment, Jodi and friends listening, and pause for perhaps three flower power breaths or three big belly breaths, and just really get present to this beautiful space and time together. And so if you're sitting somewhere, like not driving, where you can close your eyes, please do so. And if that's comfortable for you. And if you want to put put a hand on your heart and belly, and just turn your attention to your breath. And let's breathe in through our nose. Perhaps imagine you're smelling a beautiful flower, allowing your belly and then chest and lungs to expand. And exhaling slowly, letting go of anything you don't need, letting your shoulders soften, breathing in when you're ready, allowing your belly to grow like a birthday balloon. Exhaling with an ah. Ah. One more time. Nice breath in. Breathing in the beauty and light and all that you are. And exhaling, sharing that amazing grace inside of you with the world. Thank you. Thank you. Always amazing just to pause in the day and take a few breaths. So I already said to Jodi, I feel like we have like 5 episodes to record. So today we're going to record one and start with that. And so as I mentioned, when I started Yogini's, I thought, oh, I must be crazy, kids yoga. And when I Googled it, and Google was, invented by then. And, a handful of kids yoga programs came up. And of course, Jodi's Next Generation Yoga program came up. And I remember in that moment, Jodi doesn't even know this, like feeling like, okay, I'm not crazy. And look at this beautiful program. And just this sense of like, there's room, there's space for all of our voices. And of course, now there are hundreds of kids yoga programs. And sometimes even when people ask me, and I'm sure you've gotten this question too, Jodi, people say, well, are you worried about the competition? And I'm like, you know what? There are enough kids on this planet and families and teachers that if it isn't my voice, if it's someone's voice, great. Right?
Yeah, there's no shortage of kids.
That's right. That's right.
So, last time we checked.
So for those of you, like the 5 of you out there, just kidding, but who aren't familiar with Jodi Golda's amazing work, I want to share with you a little bit of her background, and then we're going to dive right into hearing her share some really beautiful stories and give us additional background and just more about who she is. So Jodi Golda Komitor is am I saying your last name right?
Komitor, you got it. Yeah.
Komitor. Okay. I was like, want to check. She's the founder of Next Generation Yoga, NGY, the first kids yoga studio in the world. Okay. Like if that isn't just the bomb, I don't know what is. Thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah. Inspired by her background in education, Jodi Golda started Next Generation Yoga in 1998 in New York City, a company she operated for 21 years. I'm going to start that over because I thought I misread the date. Inspired by her background in education, Jodi Golda started Next Generation Yoga in 1998 in New York City, a company she operated for 21 years. While in leadership at NGY, Jodi Golda developed and implemented school and community-based programs, U.S. and international teacher trainings, and multidimensional online offerings. Of course, she didn't do any of this alone, and proud of the badass teachers, trainers, and team with whom she hired, collaborated, and grew NGY. During her season as CEO of NGY, Jodi Golda celebrated many successes, including authoring The Complete Idiot's Guide to Yoga with Kids, receiving multiple features in renowned media sources, starring in yoga videos with Gaiam and Comcast on demand, winning the Kids Yoga Service Award from the National Kids Yoga Conference, and dearest to her heart, leading a volunteer service project in Kenya and certifying 100 plus Africa Yoga Project teachers in Next Generation Yoga methodology. Mm-hmm. Thank you. And yet, Jodi Golda recognizes and values the law of change, and in May of 2019, she passed the baton and sold Next Generation Yoga. Her passion for mentoring kids yoga entrepreneurs remains strong, and she's the organizer of a non-competitive, like-minded international business group called The Biz of Kids Yoga. Through the Biz of Kids Yoga, Jodi Golda provides private and group coaching to kids yoga and mindfulness professionals. She currently lives in the California Bay Area, and when she's not business coaching or in my podcast, she can be found practicing the arts of unwinding, romping in nature, spending quality time with loved ones, and performing random acts of kindness. Her main focus now? Searching for the right and perfect location for an upcoming sabbatical. Mm-hmm. That's so inspiring. And, we talked about there's so many ways, so many stories and possibilities. And I wonder, Jodi, when you think about how you started on this path up until this point, and when, they often say that we don't find yoga, yoga finds us. Mm-hmm. Would you share with us what was it for you, your experience when yoga found you?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Thank you for, for being you, for the invitation to be here, for honoring my new name as I'm in this big transition and newly identifying as Jodi Golda. I am claiming my Hebrew name. So thank you for that honor. And for this gorgeous question around how did yoga find me? And as we on the path, most all of us, I can imagine, believe that there's no mistakes, right? As I look back on my path and my journey, it is so, I never in a million years would have predicted that I would start NGY out of my apartment in New York City, build it to what it was, and then sell it. Never in a million years. And so I was introduced to yoga as a teenager by my parents. And I was about 15 years old. It was in Fire Island, which is a sweet island off of the coast of Long Island where there's no cars, there's no motorized vehicles. You have to take a ferry to get there. And my parents always summered out there. They were in a community primarily a gay community, and my parents, I think, were like, you know, a small percentage of heterosexuals. And so my mom, who was always a little bit ahead of her time, she's just super cool, had hired or had found a friend of hers, and, you know, was asked them to come and teach a private yoga class to her and my father, French man named Denny. And so I was coming out there, you know, during the summer when I was about 15, and Denny, this French man, was, you know, teaching my parents yoga, and I thought it was just the weirdest thing ever. I mean, he was like, breathe in from your head to your toes. I mean, literally, that's the joke. Like, we still remember. So I was just like, you guys are weird. You do your thing. And then one sunset, one like gorgeous sunset when they're out on the dock of the bay and they're practicing, I got this thing. I was like, that looks really good. You know, I'm like, oh my goodness, like that looks really good. So I joined them and I tried it. And probably like you, Beth, and probably like most of the listeners, like that first class that hooks you. I mean, I know very few people who are like, I hated it my first class, but there are some. But that first class was that one that really hooked me, that had me be like, oh my goodness, like I feel this in my body. I felt calm. I felt in my power. I felt centered. I mean, I really, truly remember this feeling. And so through resistance, I became a yes. And then I do remember coming back to Jersey in the fall, and there was a Jack LaLanne club, pretty much walking distance from my house. And they had yoga classes there, which were, you know, interesting, but I would walk to the Jack LaLanne club and I sought out yoga. And that continued on. So 15, then I went to, I spent my freshman year of college at Syracuse University. And I remember they offered yoga way back then. And so I was like, I sought it out myself because of the way it actually made me feel in my body and my mind. Like I felt like, I was like, this is medicine. I felt really calm. So that was like my first early experience. So I really have a ton of gratitude to my parents, who I feel like were the invitation. They were the, and it's funny because my mom continues to be, she's like this little witch. She just sent me this article. I'm not going to reveal what it is, but she just sent me this article. I was like, is she telling me something like for my next, you know, rendition? So anyways, so yes, it was due to my parents, Fire Island, Denny.
That I love that. And then what also popped into my head is people often ask me, I have 3 kids, and like, oh, your kids must, you know, they must do a lot of yoga. And it's like, well, like they do. They don't do a lot of yoga on the mat. In fact, if you ask them, of course, you'd get a really strong teenager eye roll, like eye roll asana.
Awesome.
And right. And there is a way of their being that, that I say they practice a lot of yoga off the mat. So, so speaking of kids yoga, Jodi, would you take us to the kind of the moment or moments when the universe whispered to you, all right, here you go. Here's a path, kids yoga. Let's do it. What was that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, following the, like my passion, right? So originally I thought I was super interested in nutrition. And this was as, you know, as I was getting ready to go off to college, I registered at Syracuse for nutrition. And my senior year in high school, I was required to do some 80 hours of volunteer work. And I was like, okay, I'm going to pick. And I worked with a preschool for children with Down syndrome. And I fell in love. Like literally to this day, I still, like, if I were to have kids, which I'm most likely not, I was like, I always have been like, I want a child with Down syndrome. And so for all the reasons, and if you know, you know. And I immediately, when I realized my passion here, I shifted my area of focus from nutrition to special education. So here I am going through yoga, right? I'm practicing asana yoga, and I'm studying special education. And upon graduating my 4th year, which actually I wound up finishing up at NYU in Manhattan, And I'm still like, any jobs that I'm doing is, babysitting, or it's, I volunteered at this preschool, but then I also got an assistant teaching job while I was in college at another school. So I was continuing, down the path of education with children, simultaneously practicing yoga. I get out of college, I go right into teaching in the classroom in New York City for 3 years. And again, I'm still like following, I'm like doing yoga, like, almost every day at this point. Cause it started, in Manhattan, where there's more accessibility to classes. And in my 3rd year, I'm feeling a little bit burned out and, just chasing the kids. Like, it's hard, special ed, as I'm sure many of your listeners know. And I found, actually, here it goes. It was my mother. I should name her Rookie. Her name is Rookie. She's by no means a rookie. I mean, she is a rookie, but she's got so my 3rd year, I'm home over Thanksgiving for Thanksgiving dinner. And my mom was resting on the couch in between cooking, and she's reading Yoga Journal magazine. And she says to me, I hear her, I'm like in the other room. She says, Jodi, she's Jewish and from Brooklyn, come here, you got to see this. And she pulls me over. And I'm just going to grab this article because this is the one she sent me. She's like, check this out.
That's amazing. And that you still have the article.
No, this is the article that she just sent me for this.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so she shows me this article, and it's basically, it was an article with an advertisement for Yoga for the Special Child with Sonia Sumar. And so she's like, these are your 2 things. You got to do this, right? And so it's yoga with kids with special needs. And so, of course, I took her advice, and I registered for training in that summer after my 3rd year. So it was June 1998. And I literally, Beth, I remember, as I'm sure you and many of your listeners remember, that moment when you're in that training and you're like, I want to be her. I literally remember saying about Shiva Kami being like, I want to be her. Like, she was this light, and she had such purpose and dharma, and, she held this space. And I wanted to do this similar work of working with children with special needs, and with, and also leading trainings. And I saw myself. And so literally after that 10-day training, I made a phone call to my parents, and I called the director of my school. And I said, I'm not going to go back into the classroom. I want to pursue teaching yoga to kids with special needs. And I had no business background. I had no idea how I was going to do this, but I was very clear. That was it.
I often say that the universe was whispering to me to start a kids yoga business, and I would try to brush that bird off my shoulder, stop it, like a mosquito, right? And then finally it was okay, and once I said yes, it was I really hear what you're saying. Just everything opened up. One thing I want to circle back to that you said, I think it's so important, and it sounds like it's something that continues, and it's around Rookie, your mom. I love that you've named her for us. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And how she has been obviously not just the source for your life. So thank you, Rookie, for that. And continued to be a listening for really who you and your authentic self is. Here are the 2 things you like. This is what you should do. And how that really takes the listening, even as a parent of your kids, to honor and love who their authentic self is.
Yeah.
This may seem sort of tangential, but is there anything else you want to say about that? Because there's something so tender and sweet about that.
Yeah, I think what's coming up for me, and as again, she sent me this article today. I just got it today. She sent it a while ago, but I just opened the envelope today. Is that, yes, she has the listening, right? She has the vision and the love, right, as a parent does for their child, and sees their authentic self. But it's also, is the child willing to listen to the parent? And that, I think, is one of the key components. It's not oh, mom, it's no, but it's are we willing to put our, our story or stuff about our relationship with our mom and just actually listen? Because moms, they do know best. Our parents know us. They know us. And so I think that that's really what I just wanted to add to the tenderness.
Yeah. And that, and there's so many parts of yoga, right? Yoga off the mat, whether that's self-study or just cultivating your senses, that really comes into play in that and in loving relationships, right? Mm-hmm. Being willing to be in communication and have that kind of listening. I love it. I love it. So, and thank you. And again, thank you, Rookie.
Thank you, Rookie.
So, before we go to break, one more thing I'm curious about. So, and I know that there's a bit out there about all that you've done, which is, and it isn't that I want to skip over it because it's so flipping fantastic. And again, like who you've been for the last 21 years. And of course, I'm so excited to be with you in the next, 50 years. I wonder though, Jodi, when you think about when you started Next Generation Yoga, and in these 21 years, and you've, passed this on and sold the business, what would you say are maybe 2 or 3 of the most, you can put whatever adjective you want, whether it's most surprising, most fantastic, most whatever, transformations or changes in the business. What would those most maybe surprising things or different things that you would have imagined happened in those 21 years?
And you're talking specifically about my business?
Or we could do kids yoga in general.
Yeah.
However you want to answer that question.
Before we started the recording, we were talking about how the industry has grown and has changed, and what a fun conversation that would be. And it's unbelievable to have been at the forefront, along with Marcia Wenig of Yoga Kids and Sonia Sumar of Yoga Special Child and Shakti Khalsa, a Radiant Child, to be so with those women, and they're mostly still rocking, and all 3 of those businesses are still, are still in existence, and they're still influencing. And as you said, there's hundreds, actually, I think there's thousands of, mini kids yoga businesses, and not even just mini, but they're healthy, including your own. And I would just say watching the wave that has, it's like a wildfire, and it really has caught on. And it's not, it's not just in the US, but it's, in Europe, in Australia, in Asia. Obviously, where it comes from, right? So it has really, really, really grown, and into schools, into studios, as a part of, like you said, your own children. Oh, wait, did I lose you? No, there you are. Okay, sorry, babe. As part of your own children who are not just doing asana, because we all know, right? When I was a kid, sure, yoga was asana. And for so many people, yoga is asana, and it's just this practice, and it's a workout, and that's fine. But as you know, and I know, and I'm sure so many of your listeners know, yoga is not just asana. And so I love that it has become, now, I feel like I've seen the culture of mindfulness has impacted so many children's home life, school life, community life. And this is how we are going to make the world a better place. I feel like through this yoga and mindfulness, education, emotional intelligence, education, really, we're doing really good work. And so I just want to say, I've watched it grow, and that's really the piece that stands out to me, and it's happening. It's really, really happening.
Yeah. And I remember when, and I started about 10 years behind you, and it was almost like yoga in schools was a bad word, or like it was so like unobtainable. Like I remember thinking, I'm not even writing that on my business plan because it's never going to happen. And it's so beautiful how so many schools have, you know, it's now part of curriculums, and schools are hiring yoga teachers. Any, do you have any thoughts on seeing that wave?
Yeah. You know, I've also seen the bumps, probably like you're describing, you know, of like the resistance, like we can't call it yoga. And there's still some bumps, like there's still some communities and schools that are no to inclusive. And I've been a part of some of those, you know, the whole Encinitas, that was not Next Generation Yoga, but like I was very close and watched that whole thing happen. And, you know, I think what I'll say about that is that that's going to happen no matter what, you know, no matter what it is, you know, just fill in the blank, you know, it could be music, karate, sex education, whatever it is, there's going to be some resistance somewhere, because that's what, you know, our culture thrives on, and that's what happens. So yeah, I mean, I think we keep going. I mean, I have stepped, you know, away, as you know, from Next Generation Yoga, but I think that it is something that, like, you know, I always keep saying we're like, well, right at the tipping point. Like, I think we're at the tipping point.
I so get that. I so get that. Well, hey, Jodi, let's take a quick break. And then, and you've like perfectly teed up the second half. Would love to hear about this whole space around choosing to step away from Next Generation Yoga, and sort of your yogic practice around that, and hear a little bit about what's next for you.
Great.
All right. We will be right back.